Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, my name is Ilham Maulana and I'm from D class. And in this video, I will deliver the conclusion about the video that is about language, human language, animal language, and and the three mode of communication there. And let's start with the language. Language is a complex human phenomenon, as all attempts to define it has proved inadequate. In brief, we can say that language is an original noise that we used in actual social situations by human beings. And language is basically a system of conventional spoken or written in symbols by human by means of which human beings used to communicate with each others. And there's a study of language in animals, often referred to as biolinguistics, attempts to refute this idea. And there's no one claims that animals have has a same ability with human. No one claims animals other than humans can accomplish the same linguistic abilities like humans. However, it is assumed that some animals can provide evidence of some linguistic competence. And this line of the research clearly divides into two sub-branches: the study of natural animal communication and animal experiments with human language. And let's make this conclusion more deep. Okay, and there's an animals that can clearly communicate efficiently to suit their natural needs. This is not only true that for species internal communication, but also the communication between animals belonging to different species. Every pet owner can testify this uh, to know that animals react to communicative signs regarding its needs and feelings. We can also see how animal uh, react to communicate each other. Okay, so or by other animals. So for example, dogs. Okay, for dogs cannot only react to dogs or humans, uh, but can also learn to react to the cats. Okay, a cat wagging its tail is sign of distress, unlike with a dog with the same action taking the same action. Yet a dog used to living with a cat can learn to correctly interpret this communication sign. Okay, and some natural animal communication seems to be especially complex. Such well-known examples are birds, dolphins, and whales. And despite their exotic nature, studies of natural animal communication remain limited in both scope and result. Okay, uh, our knowledge of animal communication has not grown significantly in this last century. Okay, I acknowledge it, and the main problem with these studies is that natural communication typically occurs in natural settings that are both difficult and expensive to observe. Moreover, it is difficult to interpret the patterns that are observed, and the action requiring bridging over interspecies gaps. And additionally, language shows little to no interest in this sort of studies because uh, typically conducted by biologists with no background of linguistic. Okay, so the biologists with background of linguistic, this is are important with these studies, are uh, necessarily for these studies. Okay. Next, there's a second, not less exotic field of study, is the animal experiments with human language. These are typically include an attempt to teach some animals a form of human language, so far English, Hawaiian, American Sign Language, or some specifically constructed language, exemplified lexicograms, and such experiments have been so far carried out in apes, for example, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans, okay, and parrots, dolphins, and seals, okay, and the result have only been partially acknowledged, and the progress has been slow. There are several reasons why uh, for their limited accomplishments. Firstly, as underlined above, that these are experiments in human language that are foreign for the animal. In these experiments, we try to make the bridge, the interspecies gap in the opposite way than in the first sort of studies. Namely, we try and make the animal understand with the human language, with the human communication. And animal have species specific needs which are greatly different from ours, and the animal's motivation is really different with us as a human. uh, their motivation depends on by their past limited, okay, and this leads to the second problem, that if an animal has to be rewarded for its language achievements, how can we observe be sure that it truly makes use of language and not merely conditional reacting in in an imitative imitative manner. Again, this calls for interspecies bridging. The researcher has to establish the state of mind of the animal, something we do know about the natural about the how to achieve that, and that is the second problem. And the third problem is that animals usually suffer in the laboratories, and they not live in the in the natural situation, in the wild situation with other animals. So the problem is that uh, this leads to diminished mental capacities than what one could we observe in the wild. And the last problem is that such studies require long and tedious training of the animal that is both expensive and morally debatable. No wonder, therefore, that the number of such researchers in the last 50 years lies between 10 and 20, most of which carried out by biologists and psychologists rather than linguistics. Okay. Okay, and in this first section of the video, I just I just delivered the what animal language, what is the animal language and the problem with the animal language rather than the human language. So uh, let's take the information about the animal language a little bit again, okay? So that animals communicate to locate food sources as well as their desire to willingness to mate. Thus, a more accurate term for animal language would be animal communication. The communicative capacity of animals is still not able to match to the sophistication and productivity of human language. And there's a comparison with human language. Since the 1960s, uh, which is according to Hockett's theory or Hockett's findings, that since the 1960s, when Hockett first described a set of 13 of features defining human language and how these features positively made it distinct from other forms of animal communication. And advances the study of animal communication have also revealed all closer similarities with some of Hockett's design features of language. And let's take this material to the core of the video, that in this study, in studying about language, animal language, we could remember about the mechanism in human organs, brain, and etc. And language, as we know that language as a communication way of communication, and there's a lot of species share about information with each other, but it is not enough to say that it is a language. And now we are talking about the three mode of communication that human and other organisms use to as primary communication. The number one is vocal auditory. Vocal auditory has to do with the vocal tract, then it producing sound, and then it received by the ears because auditory mechanism picks up and taken in. And furthermore, it processes in the individual broker the message, comes up with their own message and produces their own vocal emission, and that's heard by others organisms. And so this vocal auditory means of communication. And moreover, vocal auditory channel, this means that the standard human language occurs as a vocal, making sounds with the mouth. And this type of communication, which is perceived by hearing it, there are obvious exception. Writing and sign of language are example of communication in the manual visual channel. However, the vast majority of human languages occur in the vocal auditory channel as their basic mode of expression, their basic mode of communication. Writing is a secondary and somewhat marginal form of language, while sign languages are in limited use mostly among the deaf people who are limited in their ability to use the auditory part of the vocal auditory channel. And natural language is vocally transmitted by speakers as speech sounds, and auditorily received by listeners as speech waves. This can be contrasted with written language, which is visually transmitted as physical markings and interpreted as a script. Okay, and number two of mode of communication is gestural visual. We use a gestural visual as supplement. For example, now I'm talking in front of camera and I'm trying to explain uh, what I got from the video, and yeah, I'm thinking do this. Yeah, this is means as a gesture, gestural visual. Gestural visual is used to as supplement. It is used to supplement each other, and there are times when when we can't use the auditory mode. I might use just my gestural visual like this. Okay, this is still called by language. Language is just not focused on auditory books, uh, on book auditory mode. We have a gestural visual, and it make a complete in characteristic of language. Okay. Um. Anyway, I found what a research about the gesture that happened with the animal. This animal is elephant. Biologist and conservationist Joyce Poole and her husband Peter Granley, both of whom direct 11 voices, a charity they founded to research and advocate for conservation of elephant in various sanctuaries in Africa, have developed an online database decoding hundreds of distinct elephant signals and gestures. Poole and Granley have also deciphered the meaning of acoustic communication in elephants. Okay, this is interesting. Below are two forms of gestures that elephants commonly perform. And number one is aggression. Normally, in such an aggressive stance, an elephant will hold its head well above its shoulders and with tusks lifted, direct its gaze at its provoker. An elephant may also increase its height by standing on a leg and a log or an anthill to assume greater stature, an approach used by males when they are sizing each other up. Okay, and the number two is death. Okay, elephants are empathetic towards one another by holding funerals for the head. Okay, this is according to Wolcover. Elephants will try to rouse an injured or fallen elephant by using their tusk and trunk to try and feed a dead elephant, or appear to live or even carry sick, dying dead elephants. So empathetic. Okay, and elephant is one of smart animal in the world. And the third mode of communication is chemical olfactory. Chemicals are secreted by the body, and the message received by olfactory system on the nose. Okay, and as human beings, we are sensitive to the smell. Like, yeah, we used to every single day, like soap, perfume, shampoo, and etc. And that is really different with the animal. With the animal nose function. Okay, animal using chemicals olfactory uh, of mood of communication that has different purpose by regarding or depends on species of animal. Okay, let's take one example. A dog. Okay, a dog. Uh, yeah, when a dog takes pee and somewhere, that pee as a what as a territorial for the dogs, or and when the another dog comes to the uh, it's territorial. Yeah, another dog just leave it, and that is the purpose or others animal. Okay, and it is has a message, even that has layers message the of the animal communication. Okay, uh, and let's take the another section after the mode of the communication, that is a pragmatic in the what in the human communication. In the animal communication, there's a pragmatic function that mode of communication has a purpose. Okay, pragmatic that as a mode of communication that has a purpose, that people intending to share some piece of information might be around. So for example, when you hear lions roar, okay, and the people might be scary and immediately comes to their houses. It has a message, but uh, there are a reason why language and other communication have a characteristic called some anticipate. Now has to do with a particular message corresponding to a particular meaning. Okay, so that's all for my conclusion of the video of the characteristic of language video. Uh, that is, and I'm sorry for all my mistakes. Uh, Hopefully, you can learn from something a little bit uh, from my video now, and that's all. Thank you. And in this Ramadan, we also hope maybe this Ramadan be successful for all of us, and maybe Allah grant us with blessings and we keep healthy. And thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.